Forgiveness isn't fair. It doesn't erase what happened, and it certainly doesn't mean forgetting. If you've ever tried and failed to forgive someone who doesn't deserve it, what you're about to hear might completely redefine how you let go. Because the truth about forgiveness is uncomfortable, it's messy, it's complicated, and it's something most people misunderstand their entire lives. But understanding this truth might finally explain why you felt stuck, unable to move forward, yet unwilling to look back. In the next few moments, you'll confront an idea about forgiveness that could change everything you've been told. And it all starts by facing what you've been avoiding. There's someone whose name alone can change your entire day. Maybe it's your ex who built a double life while promising you forever. Maybe it's your own parent who chose their addiction over your childhood again and again. Maybe it's the friend who knew exactly how to hurt you because you trusted them with your vulnerabilities. Whoever it is, they did something that didn't just hurt you once. And here's what really gets to you. While you've been stuck with these thoughts in your head, they've probably moved on. They're living their life, maybe even thriving, while you're still bleeding from wounds they inflicted and forgot about. But what if the reason you can't let go has nothing to do with what they did to you? What if it has everything to do with what you're afraid to face about yourself? This is where Carl Jung's understanding of human psychology becomes invaluable. His insight wasn't some spiritual platitude about forgiveness being divine. It was something much more practical and, honestly, more uncomfortable. The person who hurt you isn't keeping you stuck. You are. What I'm about to give you isn't theory. This is the actual process that will free you from the emotional prison you've been living in, based on psychological principles that Jung discovered through years of studying human behavior. This works even when you don't want to forgive them. It works even when they don't deserve forgiveness. It works even when you've tried everything else and failed. Step 1. Confront what their betrayal revealed about you. Get a piece of paper right now and write this question. What did their betrayal show me about my own patterns that I don't want to see? Then answer it with brutal honesty. This isn't about taking blame for what they did. This is about taking responsibility for the patterns that made their betrayal possible. If your spouse cheated, maybe their betrayal revealed that you'd been avoiding difficult conversations about problems in your marriage for months. Maybe you chose to believe their explanations when your gut was screaming something was wrong. Maybe you stayed busy with work and kids and let your marriage run on autopilot. If your business partner stole from you, maybe it showed you that you trust people with money before you trust them with smaller things. Maybe you realized you don't do enough research before entering partnerships because you want to believe the best in people. If your friend betrayed your confidence, maybe their actions revealed that you share deep secrets with people who haven't proven they can keep smaller ones. Maybe you confuse being vulnerable with being wise about who deserves your vulnerability. Write down whatever comes up, even if it makes you squirm. The things that make you uncomfortable are usually the things you most need to see. Here's why this step is crucial. Until you understand what their betrayal was trying to teach you about yourself, you'll keep attracting the same type of people and situations. You'll keep getting hurt in the same ways because you haven't learned the lesson yet. Step 2. End the mental war against reality. Most people waste massive amounts of mental energy on something that's already over. They replay what happened, think about how things should have been different, fighting a battle that was lost the moment it occurred. This constant mental resistance drains them. While they're busy being angry about yesterday, their actual life, the one happening right now, passes them by. They give that person more time and energy than they probably received when they were actually in their life. Here's what works instead. When the mind goes back to what they did or what should have happened, acknowledge it simply. It happened and I'm still here. Not saying it was right, not saying you're fine with it, just stating the facts and refusing to waste more energy on what can't be changed. The mind will resist this at first. It's been trained to replay and analyze and fight against what happened. But fighting reality is like arguing with the weather, pointless and exhausting. What happened, happened. Power lies in what comes next, not in wishing the past could be rewritten. Accepting what happened doesn't mean approving of it or being weak. It means being smart enough to stop throwing good energy after bad. Step 3. Cut off their emotional access to you. Here's something uncomfortable to consider. That person probably isn't thinking about you anymore, but they're still dictating how you feel every day. Not because they're trying to, but because you're letting their memory run your emotional life. Make a list of every way this person still affects your emotions. Does seeing their social media posts ruin your morning? Do mutual friends mentioning them make your chest tight? Does driving past places you went together send you into a spiral? Write it all down. Every trigger, every reaction, every way they still have emotional access to you. Now, for each item on that list, take one concrete action to cut off that access. Block them on all social media platforms. If you have mutual friends who can't have a conversation without bringing them up, tell those friends directly, I don't want to hear about their name anymore. If certain places trigger memories that ruin your day, either avoid those places temporarily or go there with new people to create different associations. This isn't about pretending they never existed. This is about taking back control of your emotional environment. Every choice you make to protect your peace of mind is a choice to value yourself more than staying connected to the story of how they wronged you. Step 4. Practice self-forgiveness. You're carrying guilt about what happened. Guilt for trusting them, guilt for not seeing the signs, guilt for your own mistakes, guilt for being the kind of person this could happen to. That guilt is more toxic than their original betrayal because it's self-inflicted and ongoing. Every day you wake up and re-victimize yourself with guilt and self-blame. Write yourself a letter of forgiveness. Start it with "Dear your name" and then write "I forgive myself for." And list everything you feel guilty about. Every mistake you made, every red flag you ignored, every moment you trusted when you should have been cautious. But don't stop there. In that same letter, write down what you've learned from each mistake. How have you grown? What would you do differently now? How has this experience made you wiser about people and relationships? End the letter with this exact phrase: I did the best I could with the information I had at the time. I'm not the same person who got hurt back then. I am stronger, wiser, and more careful now because of what I learned. Read this letter out loud to yourself. Read it again the next day. Keep reading it until you believe it, because it's true. Step 5. Transform pain into protective wisdom. This final step is what transforms you from victim to victor. Instead of just surviving what happened to you, you're going to extract every ounce of wisdom from the experience so it serves your future instead of haunting it. Write down at least 5 specific things this painful experience taught you. Not vague lessons like trust your gut, but specific, actionable wisdom. For example, I learned that people who talk badly about their exes to me will probably talk badly about me to their next partner. Or I learned that someone who lies about small things will lie about big things. These lessons are your armor for the future. They're the reason you had to go through this pain. Not because you deserve to be hurt, but because you needed to learn these things to protect yourself and make better choices going forward. Here's what Jung understood that most people miss. When someone betrays us deeply, they don't just cause pain. They hold up a mirror to parts of ourselves we'd rather not see. This is why the first step in our process cuts so deep. It's not just about learning from mistakes, it's about confronting the uncomfortable truth that their betrayal revealed something about our patterns that we've been ignoring, sometimes for years. Your betrayal didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened because there were patterns in you that made it possible. Maybe you ignore red flags when you want something to work out. Maybe you give your power away to people who haven't earned it. Maybe you've been living in denial about who someone really was because the truth would have been too inconvenient. Think about the last few relationships that hurt you. Not just romantic relationships, but friendships, business partnerships, family dynamics. Do you see any patterns? Do you keep trusting people who show you through their actions that they're not trustworthy? Do you keep hoping people will change instead of accepting who they are? These patterns aren't character flaws. They're usually learned behaviors from childhood or past experiences. Maybe you learned to ignore red flags because acknowledging them would have meant admitting your family wasn't as stable as you needed it to be. Maybe you learned to give your power away because that's how you got love and approval growing up. This is why people who never get hurt often never grow. They never have to confront their blind spots because their blind spots never get them into serious trouble. But you've been forced to look at yours, and that's actually a gift, even though it doesn't feel like one. When you understand what their betrayal was trying to teach you about yourself, something remarkable happens. You stop needing them to be different than they are. You stop fighting the reality of what happened because you understand it served a purpose. This doesn't mean their betrayal was justified or that you deserved it. It means you're mature enough to extract wisdom from pain instead of just wallowing in it. Jung called this process individuation, becoming whole by integrating even our most painful experiences into who we are. It's the difference between being a victim of your experiences and being a student of them. The hardest part of forgiveness isn't letting them off the hook. It's admitting how much power you've been giving them over your daily emotional state. Right now, as you read this, someone who hurt you is controlling how you feel. They're not actively trying to control you. They might not think about you at all anymore, but your reactions to them are dictating your emotional experience of life. This is the most insidious part of betrayal. The initial hurt happens once, but then you keep re-hurting yourself every time you give them power over your emotions. You check their social media and feel sick. You hear their name and your day is ruined. You drive past a place you went together and suddenly you're angry all over again. This is where the third step in our process becomes absolutely crucial. You have to cut off their emotional access to you, completely and deliberately. But this isn't just about blocking them on social media, though that's important. It's about retraining your mind to stop giving them space. Every time you think about them, you're giving them your mental energy. Every time you replay what they did, you're giving them your time. Every time you get upset about their current happiness or success, you're giving them your peace. Here's what taking your power back actually looks like in practice. When someone mentions their name in conversation, you change the subject or excuse yourself. When you find yourself thinking about them, you redirect your attention to something else immediately. When you feel the urge to check up on them online, you do something physical instead. Go for a walk, call a friend, clean something. This feels almost impossible at first because your mind has been trained to go to them. It's become a habit, like picking at a scab. But habits can be broken with consistent effort. Start small. Pick one way they still have emotional access to you and cut it off completely. If you're driving past their house hoping to see their car, take a different route. If you're asking mutual friends about them, stop asking. Each time you make one of these choices, you're choosing to value your peace of mind more than staying connected to the drama. You're choosing yourself over the story of how they wronged you. The goal isn't to pretend they never existed. The goal is to reach a place where their existence, or lack thereof in your life, doesn't dictate your emotional state, where you could run into them at the grocery store and feel nothing more than you'd feel seeing any stranger. Jung understood that psychological freedom comes from taking back the power we've unconsciously given to others, not through anger or revenge, but through conscious choice about what we allow to affect us. But here's where it gets really difficult, and why the fourth step in our process is often where people get stuck permanently. Before you can forgive them, you have to forgive yourself. You're carrying guilt about what happened, and that guilt is more destructive than their original betrayal. You blame yourself for trusting them. You blame yourself for not seeing the signs that seem so obvious now. You blame yourself for your own mistakes in the situation. This self-blame is keeping you trapped in a way that their betrayal never could, because it's ongoing. Every day you wake up and punish yourself again for being human, for making mistakes, for not being psychic enough to see the future. Jung recognized that self-forgiveness is often more difficult than forgiving others because we know our own thoughts and motivations so intimately. We can forgive others by assuming they had reasons we don't understand, but we can't give ourselves that same benefit of the doubt because we know exactly what we were thinking when we made our choices. But here's what you need to understand about the choices you made. You made them with the information you had at the time. You didn't have the information you have now. You didn't know what you know now. You couldn't see what you can see now. The version of you that trusted them was a different person than the one reading this now. That person had different experiences, different knowledge, different awareness. They were doing the best they could with what they had. Would you blame a child for not knowing things they hadn't been taught yet? Would you blame someone for not seeing something they didn't know to look for? Then why are you blaming yourself for not knowing things you only learned through painful experience? This is why writing that letter to yourself is so important. You need to hear yourself say the words, "I forgive myself." You need to give yourself the same compassion you'd give a friend who went through something similar. Self-forgiveness doesn't mean pretending you made no mistakes. It means accepting that making mistakes is part of being human and that learning from them is part of growing up. It means treating yourself with kindness instead of contempt. Most people skip this step because it feels selfish or unnecessary. They think forgiveness is only about other people, but Jung understood that we cannot truly forgive others until we learn to forgive ourselves first. Your guilt and self-blame are like anchors keeping you stuck in the past. Until you cut those anchors loose, you'll never be able to move forward, no matter how much work you do on forgiving them. This doesn't happen overnight. Self-forgiveness is a practice, not a one-time event. Some days you'll believe it completely. Other days the guilt will creep back in and you'll have to remind yourself again, "I did the best I could with what I knew at the time." But gradually, with practice, it becomes easier. The self-criticism gets quieter. The guilt loses its grip. And eventually, you'll be able to look back at what happened with compassion for everyone involved, including yourself. But here's where it gets really difficult and why the fourth step in our process is often where people get stuck permanently. Before you can forgive them, you have to forgive yourself. You're carrying guilt about what happened, and that guilt is more destructive than their original betrayal. You blame yourself for trusting them. You blame yourself for not seeing the signs that seem so obvious now. You blame yourself for your own mistakes in the situation. This self-blame is keeping you trapped in a way that their betrayal never could, because it's ongoing. Every day you wake up and punish yourself again for being human, for making mistakes, for not being psychic enough to see the future. Jung recognized that self-forgiveness is often more difficult than forgiving others because we know our own thoughts and motivations so intimately. We can forgive others by assuming they had reasons we don't understand, but we can't give ourselves that same benefit of the doubt because we know exactly what we were thinking when we made our choices. But here's what you need to understand about the choices you made. You made them with the information you had at the time. You didn't have the information you have now. You didn't know what you know now. You couldn't see what you can see now. The version of you that trusted them was a different person than the one reading this now. That person had different experiences, different knowledge, different awareness. They were doing the best they could with what they had. Would you blame a child for not knowing things they hadn't been taught yet? Would you blame someone for not seeing something they didn't know to look for? Then why are you blaming yourself for not knowing things you only learned through painful experience? This is why writing that letter to yourself is so important. You need to hear yourself say the words, "I forgive myself." You need to give yourself the same compassion you'd give a friend who went through something similar. Self-forgiveness doesn't mean pretending you made no mistakes. It means accepting that making mistakes is part of being human and that learning from them is part of growing up. It means treating yourself with kindness instead of contempt. Most people skip this step because it feels selfish or unnecessary. They think forgiveness is only about other people, but Jung understood that we cannot truly forgive others until we learn to forgive ourselves first. Your guilt and self-blame are like anchors keeping you stuck in the past. Until you cut those anchors loose, you'll never be able to move forward, no matter how much work you do on forgiving them. This doesn't happen overnight. Self-forgiveness is a practice, not a one-time event. Some days you'll believe it completely. Other days the guilt will creep back in and you'll have to remind yourself again, "I did the best I could with what I knew at the time." But gradually with practice it becomes easier. The self-criticism gets quieter. The guilt loses its grip. And eventually you'll be able to look back at what happened with compassion for everyone involved, including yourself. You'll know you've truly forgiven them when thinking about what they did doesn't make your body tense up anymore, when you can hear their name without feeling that familiar knot in your stomach, when you can genuinely hope they're doing well, not because you're a saint, but because their happiness or misery simply doesn't register as important to your inner peace. This is what the fifth step ultimately creates, the transformation of pain into wisdom. When you can look back at what happened and see not just the hurt, but the growth it forced in you. Something profound shifts in your entire relationship with the experience. The betrayal stops being something that happened to you and becomes something that happened for you. Not because you deserved it, but because it taught you things about yourself and about people that you needed to learn to live a wiser, more protected life. Real forgiveness looks nothing like what most people imagine. It's not pretending it didn't hurt. It did hurt, and deeply. It's not excusing what they did. Their choices were their responsibility. It's not welcoming them back into your life with open arms. Forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. It's certainly not forgetting what happened. The lessons you learned are too valuable to forget. Real forgiveness is reaching a place where their choices no longer have the power to dictate your emotional state. It's understanding that holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for them to die. It's choosing your own freedom over their guilt, your own peace over their punishment. Most importantly, it's recognizing that forgiveness was never about them in the first place. It was about you refusing to let someone else's worst moment continue to define your daily experience of life. When you complete these 5 steps, truly complete them, not just think about them, you'll discover something remarkable. The weight you've been carrying around starts to lift, not all at once, but gradually, like morning fog burning off in sunlight. The mental energy you've been wasting on someone who doesn't deserve it returns to you. Suddenly you have bandwidth for new experiences, new relationships, new possibilities that you couldn't see when all your emotional resources were tied up in old hurt. The space in your heart that's been occupied by resentment opens up for joy again. You'll find yourself laughing more easily, trusting more wisely, loving more freely, not because you've forgotten how to be hurt, but because you've learned how to heal. You'll make better choices in relationships because you know what red flags look like now. You'll set better boundaries because you understand your own patterns. You'll trust your instincts more because you've learned the cost of ignoring them. And you'll realize that forgiveness was never about setting them free. They were already free. They freed themselves the moment they chose to hurt you and walked away from the consequences. Forgiveness was about setting yourself free. Free from the prison of resentment. Free from the exhaustion of anger. Free from the weight of carrying around someone else's guilt like it was your own. That's the freedom you've been looking for, and now you know exactly how to claim it.